We think we're the only ones dealing with information overload, but imagine an information crisis back in the 9th century. In the couple hundred years after the Prophet Muhammad, stories about what he said and did were spreading like wildfire. The question was, which ones were actually true? This is the story of a massive effort to find the signal in all that noise, a quest that would literally shape a civilization for more than 1,000 years. 600,000. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's the estimated number of individual reports or sayings attributed to the Prophet Muhammad that were floating around at the time. 600,000 different stories passed from person to person, all across the vast Islamic world.
And that, right there, was the critical challenge. With that many stories, sure, some were bound to be authentic, but you can bet a lot were misremembered, maybe stretched a little, or even completely made up for political or personal reasons. For a community building its laws and ethics on the Prophet's example, this wasn't just some academic puzzle. It was a huge problem.
So, to take on a challenge this huge, you'd need someone with almost superhuman dedication, a brilliant mind, and just unshakable integrity. And that person was Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Bukhari.
He was born in Bukhara, which is in modern-day Uzbekistan. And honestly, the guy was a prodigy. By the time he was 10, he was already memorizing thousands of these prophetic reports. By 16, he'd basically mastered all the major scholarly books of his day. But that was just his warm-up. He then set off on a journey that lasted for decades, traveling all over the Islamic world, from Baghdad to Cairo, just to meet the scholars who held the pieces to this massive puzzle. So what drives that kind of incredible determination? Well, according to al-Bukhari himself, it was all sparked by a really powerful dream. He saw himself standing in front of the Prophet, holding a fan to wave away flies. And the dream interpreters told him it meant he was destined to defend the Prophet from the flies of all these false stories. That dream, it became his life's mission.
Okay, so you've got the mission, but a mission is pretty useless without a solid method, right? And this is where al-Bukhari's genius really shines. He came up with one of the most rigorous systems for historical fact-checking the world had ever seen.
All right. First things first, let's get a key term out of the way, a hadith. A hadith is just one of these reports. It's got two parts. You've got the actual text of what was said, and then, this is the crucial part, you have the chain of narrators who passed it down. Think of it like a super meticulous citation trail, and al-Bukhari's whole focus was on making sure that trail was absolutely perfect.
And this became his life's work. We're talking 16 years, a huge chunk of his adult life, dedicated only to collecting, checking, and refining his collection. 16 years of just painstaking, relentless fact-checking.
So what were his rules? First, the chain of narrators had to be a perfect, unbroken line all the way back to the Prophet, no gaps allowed. Second, every single person in that chain had to have a rock-solid reputation for being honest and having an incredible memory. But it was his third condition that was the real game-changer. Al-Bukhari wasn't satisfied if two narrators just happened to live at the same time. Nope, he demanded proof that they had actually physically met. This one rule just raised the bar for authenticity to a whole new level. And this really gets to the heart of his work, right? It was this perfect mix of intense academic rigor and incredibly deep faith. After all the scholarly work was done, before he would put a single report into his book, he would perform a prayer and ask God for guidance on whether it truly belonged there.
So after 16 years of this incredible work, what was the result? Well, the final masterpiece became known as the Sahih, and what was inside was about to change the Islamic world forever.
The book is famously known as Sahih al-Bukhari, which just means the authentic collection of al-Bukhari. But its full title, well, it's a mouthful, but it shows you just how big his ambition was. He was aiming for a complete guide to the Prophet's life and teachings, all built on a rock-solid foundation of verified reports.
Now remember that number from the beginning? 600,000 reports? After applying his super strict criteria, al-Bukhari selected just over 7,000 to include. And if you take out the repetitions where he had used the same report in different chapters to make a legal point, you're left with about 4,000 unique, gold standard hadith. This was basically one of the most ambitious data filtering projects in history before computers were even a thing. And this is so key to understanding his work. The book isn't just a list. Al-Bukhari was a brilliant legal scholar, and he organized everything into chapters with these very specific, carefully crafted titles. These titles aren't just labels, they're his legal arguments. A lot of the time, the title is the argument, and the hadith that follow are his evidence. It's genius.
All right, so a book put together over 1,200 years ago. Why does it still have so much influence today? Why do we still talk about it?
Well, within the Sunni Muslim tradition, the answer is pretty clear. Sahih al-Bukhari is considered by scholarly consensus to be the most authentic and reliable book after the Quran itself. For centuries, it's been the bedrock of Islamic law, guiding everything from daily rituals to the most complex legal debates.
And get this, the book's authority was established almost right away. It's reported that over 70,000 students heard al-Bukhari himself recite the entire collection, from memory. That massive direct transmission made sure it was preserved perfectly and accepted everywhere from the very beginning.
Ever since then, Sahih al-Bukhari has basically created an entire academic ecosystem around itself. Scholars have written countless commentaries, made shorter versions for students, and compiled huge dictionaries just to study the lives of the narrators mentioned in its pages. It's a whole universe of scholarship, all spinning around this one incredible text.
You know, in the end, al-Bukhari's work was his answer to an information crisis. It was a mission to find truth in a world that was just drowning in stories. And his legacy kind of leaves us with this powerful question. What happens when a truly rigorous method and a deep, profound sense of purpose come together? Well, for al-Bukhari, the answer was an idea so powerful it could shape a civilization for over 1,000 years.